We've got our panel here of our experts, voters and party officials, one of whom is Dan here, who I want to tell you this, that if you're outside America, there are obviously things like the terrible murders of the Jewish worshippers in Pittsburgh, and also, of course, the letter bombs, the rest, they're paramount. But I wondered whether for you, as chairman of the campaign here in Elkhart, these outside things really are playing any part, or is it solely about local issues?
I think it is way more about pocketbook issues than it is the issues that you mentioned. Most people in this community have experienced great economic benefits from the expanding economy, especially Elkhart County, where we lead the nation in manufacturing employment.
And it's obviously been a fantastic upturn, and therefore, is that a problem for you? I mean, if things are going well here economically, why change horses?
Well, I guess what I would say to that is, I think we have to point out that, number one, in 2016, when President Trump came into office, he inherited a healthy economy. Now, this wasn't an economy that was in a recession or on an abyss. This was an economy that had six straight years of economic growth under President Obama. So the economy wasn't really much of an issue there. But, my friend Dan there would point out and say that, well, GDP has grown by 3% under President Trump's administration. And I would agree, and I would say that that is phenomenal. But the big problem with that is people aren't seeing the difference in that in their pocketbook or on those issues that matter to them most. They're not that's not helping them get access to health care. They're not seeing an increase in wages because of that. It's not helping send their kids to school. It's not helping improve their public education systems. And I think that's really what voters are looking at. I think it still is about the economy, but I think it's in a lot different of a sense now.
Well, Quintero, you're in the health area and you're looking after Latino and very much sort of the minority health services. And I'm wondering, for you, is healthcare the absolutely determining issue?
I will say that is one of the main considerations that will have in the moment to vote. It is clear that it is not the right healthcare that any citizen deserve just for being a citizen. So it will be one of the topics that I will be looking carefully.
Liliana, I got your name wrong, actually. I'm sorry about that.
Yeah, Lillian.
But I wanted to ask you, Mike, I mean, I get the impression you're a Republican, but not a Trumpist.
Well, that would be accurate. It's pretty well known in this community. I really wasn't enamored with Mr. Trump even during the primary campaign. I have an agricultural background and spent a lot of time with ag organizations working for free trade and open trade in a global market.
So what's your Trump problem?
Well, my Trump problem is, even early in the campaign, he's very clear about his trade policies, which I thought were against free market and open market policies. So that was a problem for me initially.
Well, what about you, Kelly? Because I think you're also worried about Mr. Trump, but from a slightly different axis. Do you feel things are getting bitter and out of hand?
Well, yes, I've had to become an activist and more politically involved since the election of Donald Trump, because I feel like our American values are being sold out, and that we're becoming fascist, we're becoming xenophobic. Not that these issues exist in our country, but now it's in the White House, and it's devastating for me.
Well, Linda, I was out canvassing with you yesterday, and it was a rather mellow experience, although we did run into somebody who was not quite as enthusiastic about Mr. Trump as he was about republicanism. And I just wondered, when I asked you on the path there yesterday by the lake, I said, well, now, do some people like and some people hate Mr. Trump? You admitted that it was quite a sort of even split.
That's correct. We've knocked on over 6,000 doors, and it is very split on how they feel about him. But the one thing that they can't argue with is the economy and the fact that they've cut taxes and he's rolled back regulations, and people are happy about that. But yes, you're right. It is very split.
Mark, the thing which you have a problem trying to deal with as Republicans is trying to get a senator out who's been very deft at kind of pretending he is a bit of a Republican. I mean, he's a bit soft, I mean, he's hardly a hardline Democrat. Joe Donnelly is quite a survivor. I don't think you're going to tip him out, are you?
So the role I play, I stay very nonpartisan. I'm a big believer in the Elkhart County economy and this region as a whole. I may agree with our friends from St. Joe County. Elkhart County was just recently reported as having the highest wage growth in the nation. as a percentage. Bureau of Labor Statistics came out with that, our 2017 growth. Things are happening in this region, and things are happening really well. Was the economy good ahead of time? I'll let these folks debate that.
So will you vote
But the
for the
economy
incumbent
is-
senator then?
No, I can't really reveal that. I play a very nonpartisan role. Economic development is nonpartisan. We talk in this community, we talk with our friends to the west, that we're nonpartisan. We believe in our community first.
Well, can I push you, Dallas, because it is a slight problem that he's not so determinedly Democrat in that kind of way that you like to attack as Republicans. He's a bit of a softie.
You're talking about Donnelly.
I am.
Donnelly has not been the worst politician that I've seen. I mean, he's done.
So it's a bit hard to attack him.
It is. I mean, unless you truly know someone, I don't think it's fair to attack anyone. And I've gotten to know the senator over the years, and I found him to be cordial and affable, and he's done some things to help on reg relief. Whether his party will go as far as we would like in some of the regulatory relief areas, I don't know that that's the case. I can say that, to Mark's point, that being an employer, one of our biggest challenges right now are finding people to employ because the unemployment rate is so low and our wages are growing very quickly.
That brings us very neatly to the caravan. After all, if you haven't got enough people to fill the jobs, even you would have to admit, Dan, that you're going to have to bring some people in, and some of those people might be immigrants.
That's correct. And I think every American generally would appreciate and understands the value of immigration. It's the issue of whether it's legally done. This problem has been going on for 30 or 40 years. It's because typical politicians like Joe Donnelly don't ever really attack the issue. Then it gets so divisive that solutions, bipartisan solutions, are nearly impossible. So, a wall to stop illegal immigration plus more legal would probably be a solution.
But that brings us very neatly, Arvis, to the caravan, because the truth is these Honduran refugees, and that's what they are, they're fleeing tyranny in Honduras, are in a situation where they cannot apply for any kind of entry into the United States without coming to the United States. So here we have a complete conundrum.
I think really, again, and I think this is a lot of the issues in politics, right? It's a process problem. And we've got an issue where we have people that are wanting to come to the country, and our process is cumbersome in doing that. So the amount of time it takes to get into the country legally, and once you get here legally, the amount of money it costs someone that's here to become here permanently is extreme. So it's very difficult, and it becomes a process problem. I think all of us would probably agree that in all of the politics, part of the issue is we need politicians and our elected officials to make decisions so we know how to move.
Well, but this is then, Professor, a completely odd thing. You make a great fuss about something which is actually a process issue. These people are genuinely fleeing a bad situation in Honduras. There may be people who've joined them and perhaps aren't in that situation, but in the main, that's who they are.
That's exactly right, and this is typical of American history, that at times we embrace immigrants. In fact, immigrants are a primary contributor to the economic growth that has happened here in Elkhart County, specifically in the RV industry. It is well known, it is well accepted, it is well embraced. However, it is the same Republican Party leadership in the Senate and in the House that has prevented the serious consideration of any bipartisan legislation to try to address the serious partisan process issues and other issues that exist.
Well, Pastor, you run a bipartisan church. They even talk about it being the purple church, a mix of blue and red, which is, of course, what the two parties are mixed of. So how do you see the solution to this extraordinarily divisive issue?
To my mind, this is very clear. I mean, there's some places in the Bible that are not clear, but when it comes to immigration, in the Old Testament, the New Testament, it is always about you measure the morality of a society by how it treats the stranger. And that has been part of the DNA of our faith for 2,000 years. And so right now, when I see a caravan of 3,000 raggle-taggled people fleeing gang violence in Honduras and Guatemala, and there is language like this is an assault. There's language that leads to violence towards them. I say we do not have a moral voice in the White House right now.
Well, Dallas, I'm therefore bound to ask you, if in fact your plants need workers, and there are people wishing to apply for asylum here who might be those workers, why is there this bitter, ferocious language? And is it something of which you, as a Republican, approve?
Well, I'm a conservative, not necessarily a Republican, but I will say that immigration is imperative. We need more people to immigrate into the United States. However, you can't be a sovereign country without sovereign borders. Our problem is that the House, the Senate, and the White House need to get together, and both parties, and allow more immigrants to legally immigrate into America. It's what America's built on, is immigration.
Right,
Almost all of us have come from another country.
In which case, Arvis, dare you advocate that actually this is how you should treat immigrants? You should be more gentle and reasonable and work something out instead of yelling about them and saying, look, we're going to send the army and all the rest of it.
I would totally agree with what Dallas said. We have to, like we're having this civil conversation. We're Republicans, we're Democrats, we're independent, we're the clergy, but we're having a civil conversation. That's what needs to happen in the House and the Senate. And we're not getting the leadership for that to happen, and that's part of the problem. From President Eisenhower to President Trump, I've expected a certain class to come with being the president. I expect presidential. And when you don't get that, you get what we have right now, a discourse in our government.
Dan, do you think this might be damaging you? Or do you think it's playing well? The question of the caravan, which Mr. Trump's made an enormous amount of.
Again, I think that the economy is the #1 issue on people's minds. Immigration concerns people in the immigrant community greatly, and I understand that. The economy
but it
is
also
what
affects employers,
Well, sure it
which
does.
Dawson has stressed.
It certainly does. It certainly does.
I mean, when the ICE detention center tried to get built here in Elkhart, it was both the religious community, the sort of a progressive coalition, but it was also the business community that said, we don't want to have a coalition, we do not want an ICE detention center here, which is going to scare away immigrants. And it was about the economy, but it was also about what kind of people we wanted to be.
That wasn't the only one.
But it isn't accurate to say that only immigrants are interested in immigration. If that were the case, President Trump wouldn't be talking about immigration.
I agree.
That's correct.
Talking about immigration to
What
try
I
to
said
get
is
immigrant
that
support.
the leading
He's
issue for
talking about
voters.
immigration to try to get support from those who are against any reasonable attempt to try to push forward on having
St. Joseph
immigration
County,
reform.
We're in the middle of a sheriff's race right now, and actually our sheriff candidate has made not working with ICE within St. Joseph County part of his campaign, and he's being very successful with that. So, I mean, I would agree that it is an issue that does transcend, and he's doing well, with that campaign stance. But I'd also agree with Dan. Unfortunately, it's not the leading issue with voters right now, although a lot of people might say that it should be.
I don't really understand why we've had a perfectly civil discussion about immigration and about the caravan when this doesn't appear to be possible in the higher stage. Is this the beauty of the local or the badness of the national?
It's the beauty of not actually having a vote in Congress. I would suggest that if we were voting, it would get more contentious.
Well, look, let's pause there for the moment.
There have been put together in Congress, bipartisan coalitions to promote immigration reform, and no votes have been allowed on those bipartisan bills by Republican Party leaders.
In the Mobile Home Hall of Fame Museum, talking to politicians, voters and experts about who this divided state is likely to back in Tuesday's midterm poll. While we've been on air, President Trump has been talking about that migrant caravan heading to the U.S. from Mexico.
And we want people to come in. You've all been reading about the immigration situation with the caravans and all, but the fact is we want people coming into the country. We want them to come in legally. They want to come through a system that we have set up and that we're really setting up well. And they want to come in, and we want them to come in through merit.
Well, more on immigration there from Mr. Trump. But what I want to ask you is about how we heal the wounds. Now, I mean, it is not an exaggeration to say that I used to work here 40 years ago, and I believe the level of racism that I've seen described in this contest has been very serious. What do you make of that?
Well, I think it's the overt racism that has started to pop back up, and you know, I don't know that we've ever been perfect on that issue. It's one that we've struggled with since our very beginning, and we
But we
continue
had a
to.
black president, and we thought we were moving in a certain direction.
We did, but here's the thing, and I'll just use when President Trump was here just recently, is you had protesters on one side, you had people on the inside, but when the cameras all left, I got up the next morning, we all went to work together and had the same conversations we've always had, and we still come together as a community, and so as a nation, we can do that, but it's that constant the constant visuals that we get over and over again. It's real, but we need to deal with it.
But America is not alone in this. This is also worldwide. There's hatred and there's been more violence. And I mean, Professor, how do you read it and how do you see it coming together again? There are terrible divisions in this country.
The United States has always had periods when immigrants have been vilified and attacked. We have a history of deportations, we have a history of non-citizenship, but interestingly, after those periods, and there are politicians who gain from that, the country swings to be more open and inclusive. That's my hope. Is that reasonable people will get together after whatever period of spike of division that we have. It is part of a worldwide phenomenon. There are many countries that are moving towards very authoritarian leaders. We just had an election in Brazil where an extremely authoritarian leader won. My hope is that this doesn't become something that is accepted by most Americans who are used to working on a bipartisan basis, not always agreeing with each other, but caring for each other and about the future of the country.
But you see, Kelly, I know that you've used the word fascism being on the rise. Your family has some Germanic roots. I mean, do you really mean it as strongly as that?
Yes, I absolutely believe it because of the xenophobia and trying to divide people by pointing out the other. You know, we're not necessarily all exactly the same. There's different religions, there's different ethnicities, but we are all equal and we're all entitled to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness in this country. And those are my American values, and that's why I'm fighting for. Yes, I really believe that this election is going to either rebuke Trumpism or represent that, no, there's another America. We can be better than that.
And can I add something? I will say that we are in such a beautiful moment to do something. You find schools, corporations that have 50% kids that their first language is Spanish. We have all this economy blooming thanks to these immigrants. So we just need to have clear rules, clear guidelines, so we keep growing as a community, embracing the beauty of being multicultural, but not dividing and creating that hatred. That is what we perceive right now.
But that's when I come to you Republicans. Don't you call on your own president to be the healing force? He seems to be a white president.
I disagree greatly with that characterization. And I will tell you this, that opportunity and jobs and the opportunity for success is the greatest remedy to heal division. It's funny, people don't like the way Donald Trump works, but there is no arguing with the results. Black unemployment is as low as it has ever been. Hispanic unemployment is as low as it's ever been.
But I'm still pressing the question. Linda, for example, could he do more to heal this nation?
Well, I think everybody can do more.
Mark, what you just...
Even this panel, as we're sitting here, you've got the left over there, you've got the right over here. Arvis, would you switch seats with me? Because this is how we do things. And
I'd sit with Mike, yeah.
would you mind, my friend?
But do I? So I need to sit next to you. Okay, but this is
now, what have we
to
achieved?
change your mind.
Tell me what we've achieved. Tell me what we've achieved.
We always, local government is closest to the people. I got to see Mike 3 or 4 times a week. You know, I don't see my congresswoman, I don't see my senator. I see him when I see him. We have to live together. That's the difference. But I do believe that the leader of the greatest country in the world has to send a message of cohesiveness.
Yes.
And as a person of color, I don't get that. The covert racism has come about.
Well,
and it's been made acceptable, and that's not.
I wish more people could have seen in America could have seen what we've said here today. I mean, that's a wonderful message to put forward. Thank you very much indeed.